In Haimu's state at this time, it is really too expensive to mobilize the blood essence in his body for use. However, fortunately, the body is not entirely his. While he suffers, Aoki, the original owner of the body, will also be involved. In this way, it makes Haimu feel better. But this is not the case at present. What he has to do is to improve the power of catching heaven claws again. As an Italian-level fighting skill, today's Sky Claw has never had the power of 1% at its peak. The most important of Italian-level fighting skills is the integration of fighting spirit and soul power. Only when they are integrated and complement each other can their power be doubled. With a little effort, he took a deep breath of the air with a little bloody smell in front of him, and Haimu's eyes closed slowly. At the moment when he opened again, his pupils were shining brightly and his mind moved. The remaining fighting spirit in his body surged like a surging river, and in the center of Haimu's eyebrows, there was a magnificent soul force. It also turns into a wave of startling waves invisibly, sweeping towards all corners of this space. Then the next moment, Haimu's right index finger and middle finger were close together, his wrist moved, and his fingertip was constantly moving on the drop of blood essence. With his fingertips constantly moving, the invisible soul force around his body seemed to be under some kind of traction and gathered in that drop of blood essence. Drink. Give it to me. Suddenly, Haimu gave a low drink like a fierce beast in his mouth, and his dark index finger pointed at the drop of blood essence at the same time. At that time, the light was shining everywhere. Countless golden lights wrapped by the soul power were like dazzling sunshine. Then they all merged into the Sky Claw and merged into it along the vortices on the surface of the Sky Claw, so that the Sky Claw had a special power. Wong. At a certain moment, in the silent void, there was a buzzing sound like space vibration. Then I saw a circle of gorgeous flame and air waves in the void, which was like a wave on the sea. With that buzzing sound, it spread rapidly and broke through all the constraints of the space around me. It hit the huge Lingtian claw that was wrapping it in it. Lingtian's claws also seemed to be sensing, covering most of the void space, and also sent out a tremor at this moment. Then the huge Lingtian claws seemed to live. The huge claws moved suddenly, opened their 5 fingers, waved their sharp claws, and one claw blasted at the oncoming flame waves. At this moment, the real boom has just begun. Boom. The terrible fighting storm swept from the void like a tsunami. The gorgeous flame was mixed with strong black fog. They were like 2 giant dragons fighting each other. With this terrible fighting storm sweeping the 4 directions. At this moment, the whole space trembled violently, and even on this space, the side just returned to the quiet and peaceful world trembled slightly at this moment. What's going on? A flash of light flashed over the endless forest. Then, Luo Laro's figure appeared in the void. A pair of sharp old eyes stared at the earth in the forest below. Just now, Luo Laro clearly felt that there was a slight tremor in this space, and the reason for the tremor came from his current land. To be exact, it should be the depths of the earth. With Luo Laro's cultivation and extraordinary perception, even if you can't see all the scenes of the source, you can also know that the power that makes this space tremble comes from 2 fighting skills. Aware of this, Luo Laro's face suddenly changed slightly. Haimu involved Xiao Yang in the depths of the earth for half a month. With Haimu's strength and half a month, Xiao Yang was afraid to have become the soul under his claws. But in that case, who would be the person who showed his fighting skills at the moment? At the thought of Xiao Yang, Luo Laro's gloomy face for half a month suddenly became gloomy. The reason for Xiao Yang's accident is still on his head after all. But now one wave has not been leveled and another wave has started again. It's only half a month. How can the depths of the earth be turbulent again? What's the matter? Is the rock owl still alive? How could he still keep the rock owl by Haimu's means? Moreover, at that time, the rock owl was at the end of a powerful crossbow. Even if he recovered in the past half a month, he could not be Blackwood's opponent. Then this man. After a burst of analysis in his heart, Luo Laro's eyes suddenly brightened, and his eyebrows seemed to think of something. He held his palm slightly under his sleeve robe and muttered in a low voice. Can you say? Is this the old guy Aoki? He broke free? Thinking of this, Luo Laro felt a little relaxed. At present, Xiao Yang has had an accident and Aoki can live. For him, it can be regarded as a good result after all. But then, Luo Laro locked his eyebrows again. Based on his understanding of the 2 people, Haimu's own strength was stronger than Qingmu. In the past, he and Qingmu joined hands to suppress Haimu reluctantly. Although Haimu had exhausted all the strength accumulated over the past millennium in the war half a month ago, Qingmu also consumed a lot in that war. Under the control of Haimu, The strength in his body must be exhausted. After half a month's recovery, even if Ebony can't return to the previous state, it must not be able to deal with by Aoki. If Aoki meets again at this time, the result will be bad. At the thought of this, Luo Laro's face just relaxed, but he couldn't help being nervous again. After hesitating for a moment, Luo Laro quickly settled his mind. As soon as his palm turned over, a green jade card appeared in Luo Laro's palm. At the moment when the jade card appeared, Luo Laro was a fierce grip of his palm. The green jade card was immediately pinched and exploded into a pile of stone powder. At the same time, there was a flash of brilliance in the depths of the 10,000 Mu mountain forest. Dozens of figures swept up the void, and then turned into green meteors, flying towards Luo Laro quickly. Luo Lao. When they came near, the dozens of figures stopped together, stood in the void, bowed to Luo Laro, and spoke with respect. At this time, Luo Laro was not in the mood to take care of these red tape. He waved his hand indiscriminately and said aloud, "Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of BTTH Rebirth of Emperor Yang episode number 49 based on novel. So let's start." In the void, Xiao Yang strode out of the space crack behind him, appeared again in the world of Shenling family, and looked at the old figure in the sky with a smile. At the moment, on the horizon, Luo Laro is also an unbelievable lung, looking at Xiao Yang with a smile standing in the void below. At the moment when Xiao Yang appeared, he had noticed the unique smell of different fire on him. Therefore, there is no need to think about it. The Xiao Yang appearing at the moment must be the real Xiao Yang, not the one after Haimu occupied his body. Rock Owl. You're still alive. This. After a long time, Luo Laro just spit out a word from his mouth, and Xiao Yang nodded and smiled. Just after Luo Laro's words fell, there was another twist in the void beside Xiao Yang. Then, the figure of Qingmu slowly appeared beside Xiao Yang. Ha ha, Laro Luo. As soon as he appeared, a long smile came out. When Luo saw it, his eyes suddenly coagulated, and then there was a surprise in his eyes. He never thought that Haimu didn't kill Xiao Yang this time, and Qingmu was intact. This was really an unexpected surprise. During the transformation of the printed knot in his hand, Luo quickly dispersed the large array below, and then his body flashed, which suddenly appeared in front of Xiao Yang. Looking at the two people who were unharmed in front of him, Luo Laro's face looked more surprised, but in addition to the surprise, Luo Laro couldn't help feeling a burst of doubt. Since Xiao Yang and others are all right now, what about Haimu? Qingmu also saw the difference in Laro Luo's face. He smiled and looked at Xiao Yang. A faint light flashed in the depths of his pupils. Then he looked at Laro Luo and said with a smile, "Hihi, don't think about it. Haimu has been solved by the little friend of Rock Owl." As soon as he said this, Luo Laro and the spirit guards coming behind him also changed their complexion. According to the meaning of Qingmu's words, it seems that Haimu was solved by Xiao Yang alone. Luo Laro looked at Xiao Yang with surprise. He also knew a little about Xiao Yang's means. Even if the Buddha's anger reincarnation is based on his opinion, it can only be described in 4 words, but if it's alone, I'm afraid it's not enough. Moreover, Haimu's strength is more powerful than Xiao Yang's, and the latter's fighting skills are also quite extraordinary. Although he had consumed a lot when he kidnapped Xiao Yang at that time, even so, Xiao Yang is afraid that it is also difficult to meet him. What's more, the space is where Haimu's nest is. There, Haimu has more resources to use. It's impossible to rely on Xiao Yang alone. Xiao Yang had no choice but to let go of Luo Laro's doubt, while Qingmu's eyes changed rapidly. He hurriedly looked at Luo Laro and interrupted his thoughts. Looking at the slightly strange look on Aoki's face, Luo also frowned slightly, but Aoki didn't say, he didn't ask much, so he had to shake his head. But then he seemed to think of something. He looked back at Qingmu again and asked, "What do you mean you just said it was solved?" Seeing that Luo Laro's problem has returned to the origin, Aoki also has pain in his heart. He sighed helplessly. Aoki said again, "I mean, Blackwood, he's dead." As soon as he said this, Laro Luo and the Lingwei behind him changed their faces in an instant. Laro Luo's mood needless to say, but the Lingwei behind him looked at Xiao Yang beside Qingmu with unbelievable eyes. Previously, they heard clearly that Xiao Yang solved Haimu with his own strength. They originally thought that even if they could defeat Haimu with Xiao Yang's strength, they would only seal it with the help of the power of different fire, but what they didn't expect was that Xiao Yang not only defeated Haimu, but also killed her. These achievements are really terrible. Luo Laro also fixed his eyes on Xiao Yang at the moment. Although he was prepared, he was still excited in front of the result. He never thought that Xiao Yang's strength could reach such a point. Xiao Yang also noticed the eyes of Luo and others. His old face was slightly red and coughed twice. It was not funny. He rubbed his nose with his hands, and his eyes turned slightly. He said with a soft dry smile, "Ha ha. It's just good luck. I didn't expect that strange fire would suppress him so strongly." The voice fell, and the people behind Luo Laro also looked at each other. They haven't really seen different fire, but they also know some about the terror of different fire. At the moment, hearing Xiao Yang's words, they naturally take it as the credit of different fire. However, it's really good for them to think so. The reason why they can kill Blackwood is really because of the different fire, but the different fire is not in Xiao Yang's body. Luo Laro was non-committal about Xiao Yang's words, and he didn't believe it at all. Xiao Yang's strange fire is not unknown to him. Although it is strong, he naturally knows from his knowledge that those strange fires are all just sub-fires. It's okay to deal with ordinary semi-emperors. If he faces an old guy like Haimu, it will be greatly reduced. Xiao Yang's words fell, but the atmosphere in the field was suddenly embarrassed. Xiao Yang and the three looked at each other, and there was no more words for a time. Instead, Qingmu looked at Laro Luo opposite him, glanced at Xiao Yang on one side, coughed twice, looked around Laro Luo, looked at the spirit guards behind him, and shouted, come on, it's all right now. What should I do? There's nothing good here." Obviously, the dignity of Aoki, the patriarch, was quite imposing. With a loud drink, the spirits behind Luo dispersed and left. Then, Aoki turned his eyes to Xiao Yang. Glancing at Luo Ao, Aoki asked to brush his mouth. His eyes flashed slightly and he didn't know what to say. When he looked at Xiao Yang, he opened his mouth with a smile on his wrinkled old face and said, "Hehe, by the way, I don't know what you want to do when you come to our family this time." As soon as these words came out, Xiao Yang and Luo Laro both looked very active. When they said this, Xiao Yang immediately remembered. This time, when he entered the Shenling family, he came to find Luo Laro, but he didn't expect to create complications. Now that Haimu has been solved, it's time to come back and solve the problem he wants. At the moment when Aoki said this, Luo suddenly came back to his mind. All the things that happened this time really broke the matter that Xiao Yang came to him. At this time, the crisis has been solved, and Xiao Yang's matter really needs to be solved. Looking up, Xiao Yang looked at Laro Luo with a sigh, and Laro Luo also looked at Xiao Yang with a smile on his mouth and said with a smile, "Ha ha, I almost forgot my business. If I remember the old man well, this time the little friend of the rock owl came to me for your mysterious ruler." Luo Laro's voice fell, and the palm turned over, and the brilliance appeared in the palm. Then, a broad black giant ruler appeared in Luo Laro's palm. This dark giant ruler is Xiao Yang's mysterious ruler. At the moment, the Shen heavy ruler has recovered its original appearance, and the deep cracks on it have disappeared. The thick ruler body and special strange lines. The Xuanzhong ruler placed in front of Xiao Yang at the moment is like what he saw at the first sight. It comes to his face, and there is an extremely calm and thick feeling. In order to repair this mysterious heavy ruler, the old man me, but I haven't spared no effort. With a slight smile, Laro Luo made a slight effort in the palm of his hand. An invisible force came flying towards Xiao Yang with Shen's heavy ruler. In front of him, Xiao Yang stared at the Zhuan Chongqi in front of him. His eyes showed the color of memory. His strong body trembled slightly at the moment. The constantly surging emotions in his heart make the emptiness around his body, which can't help popping up circles of slight spatial ripples. After a long time, Xiao Yang took a deep breath, his arms trembled slightly and stretched out slowly, and his two palms were carefully close to the Shen heavy ruler in front of him from below. The unique metallic feeling of Yang meteorite black iron and the familiar cold make Xiao Yang's heart suddenly become hot at the moment. The different fire in the cyclone in Xiao Yang's body also runs up along the meridians in Xiao Yang's body involuntarily. At Xiao Yang's fingertips, he touched the old friend who had just recovered from serious injury. At the moment, Xiao Yang's cheeks are red and his veins on his forehead are exposed, the lips are tightly closed, but the teeth in the mouth are constantly colliding and trembling with each other. The nose tip is also bleeding red, and the heavy breathing makes the pain between Xiao Yang's nose more intense. A pair of dark eyes, now in the eyes, are also full of excited tears, but in the depths of the pupils, there is a very excited joy luster. The Shen heavy ruler in front of me is finally restored to its original appearance. And this also makes the big stone in Xiao Yang's heart fall to the ground at this moment. The death of Shen Chongkai has always been a heart disease in Xiao Yang's heart. Now how can he not be excited to see Shen Chongkai repeat his glory? Seeing the expression on Xiao Yang's face, old Luo on the opposite side also knows how deep this Shen Chongqi's feelings are in Xiao Yang's heart. In Xiao Yang's heart, Shen Chongkai is probably no longer as simple as a weapon. I'm afraid there is a deep story. Looking at each other with Aoki, they both saw the different look in each other's eyes, and then looked at each other with a smile. Luo Laro's heart moved. The invisible force holding the Shen heavy ruler suddenly dispersed, and the next moment, Xiao Yang's face suddenly changed. Xiao Yang originally held Shen Chongqi's palm, but when Luo Laro dispersed the power, he suddenly sank, and his face changed suddenly. At the same time, the fighting spirit in the cyclone in Xiao Yang's body also stagnated at this moment. If he didn't respond in time, Shen Chongkai might have to have a close contact with the ground. When Xiao Yang took a lot of effort to grasp the Shen heavy ruler in the palm of his hand, he completely reacted. At the moment, the Shen heavy ruler in his palm unexpectedly gave him a rather heavy feeling of familiarity. The fighting spirit in his body also stagnated at this moment. After Xiao Yang noticed it, he was not surprised by it. Instead, he showed a warm smile of nostalgia. He really hasn't felt this feeling for many years. He hasn't felt it since he was completely familiar with Shenchong ruler. Now he touches it again, which makes Xiao Yang recall his days in the Warcraft Mountains. Thinking of this, Xiao Yang's mind also involuntarily emerged a beautiful shadow of a chest injury, which is Yunyun. Looking back on the beautiful scenery with Yunyun in the cave, even at this moment, Xiao Yang still has an old face and can't help blushing. But then another familiar figure jumped into Xiao Yang's mind. A snow-white dress, a pure white and tender pretty face and a fresh and ethereal temperament. The most striking thing is the slender willow waist that is not enough to grasp. These people may not be the little medical fairy who accompanied Xiao Yang to Zhengzhou all the way. Who can they be? Hihi, I don't know how you are now. Little doctor, you didn't show up when I left that day, and I don't know if you can meet again in the future. Xiao Yang sighed with a slight sigh in his heart. Xiao Yang again turned his eyes back to the Shenchong ruler in his hand and felt all kinds of familiar feelings from the giant ruler. Xiao Yang couldn't help exerting slight force on the palm holding the ruler handle. Hihi, Rockowl boy, you're mysterious and heavy, but you're really hurt. Looking back, Xiao Yang heard Luo Laro's strange words with a smile, but his eyebrows could not help but frown. At the moment, the Shen heavy ruler in his hand has not fully recovered. Seeing Xiao Yang looking at himself, Luo Laro smiled again, then showed a sad color on his face, sighed in a low voice and said, "Your Shen heavy ruler has basically recovered, but I paid a lot to help you repair it. Most of the flame meteorite black iron you gave me fell into your Shen heavy ruler." Hearing this, Xiao Yang couldn't help laughing. He thought there was something wrong with Xuan Chongqi. It turned out that Luo felt a loss and made a loss. In that case, I'd like to thank Mr. Luo for his help. If you can get any natural and earth treasures in the future, you should leave the best to your predecessors first. When hearing Xiao Yang's words, Luo turned pale, smiled loudly, looked at the greenwood beside him, and laughed. "Ha ha, that's good. You're really good. At least you have more conscience than some people. If the Shen heavy ruler is damaged again in the future, just ask me. I promise to repair it for you. Ha ha." Hearing this, Aoki couldn't help but curl his mouth again and scold secretly in his heart. Luo Ao has been staying in his Shenling family these years. He has a lot of things to pit him. Fortunately, he meant to turn around and throw a rake. But after hearing this, Xiao Yang showed a suspicious look on his face again. After listening to Luo Laro's words, the Shenchong ruler in the future will be damaged. Thinking of this, Xiao Yang felt a little worried. Shenchong Kai was an important thing for him. This repair, Xiao Yang never wanted to hurt him again, but it seemed inevitable to listen to the meaning of Luo Laro's words. "Luo Lao, what did you just say?" Before the words fell, Luo turned right. He waved his hand to interrupt Xiao Yang, took a breath, and then slowly said, "Yes, although your Shen heavy ruler has recovered almost as before, after all, you have been injured once, which will inevitably leave hidden dangers. Therefore, if you are seriously damaged again in the war in the future, I'm afraid it will be damaged twice." Hearing this, the greenwood on one side also looked at Xiao Yang solemnly. Xiao Yang was even more gloomy. For a time, the atmosphere suddenly became depressed. "Old Luo, isn't there any way to make the Shen heavy ruler invincible?" After a long silence, Xiao Yang asked again. When Luo Laro heard this, a faint light flashed quietly in the depths of his pupils. His eyes turned, as if he were thinking about something. After a moment, he began to say as if he had thought of something. Yes. There is a way to completely change your Xian heavy ruler. After that method, your Xian heavy ruler can be guaranteed not to be destroyed even if it is a full blow from a source-respected strong man. Hiss. As soon as he said this, the green wood on one side couldn't help taking a breath, and was able to take a full blow from a strong source. This is enough to show its firmness. When Xiao Yang heard this, there was a flash of joy on his face. If he could do so, wouldn't his Xian heavy ruler really be invincible? Immediately, Xiao Yang looked at Laro Luo with expectation on his face and hurriedly asked. In that case, what's the method, Mr. Luo? Facing Xiao Yang's question, Luo Laro's eyelids were slightly low and didn't answer. After a good moment, he took a deep breath and said slowly, It's not that I can't tell you this method, but it's still too early. Even if I really tell you, it's not good for you. Hearing this, Xiao Yang immediately shriveled down like a deflated ball. After talking for a long time, it turned out that it was just to arouse his appetite, but somehow, it still made him have an expectation in his heart. Seeing the slightly lost look on Xiao Yang's face, old Luo smiled faintly and continued. Well, if you can reach the central region in the future, I will tell you personally. As for now, with your first experience, I think you will protect this mysterious ruler more carefully in the future. Looking at the dark giant ruler in his palm and listening to the words in Laro Luo's mouth, Xiao Yang slowly raised a smile. Since the secret in Luo Laro's mouth is still unknown, just focus on the present. Suddenly, Xiao Yang's palm holding Shen Chongkai was tightened again, and the huge ruler was shocked. Xiao Yang's body was already rising in the air, and swept up the higher void in an instant. When Xiao Yang's mind moved, the fighting spirit in the cyclone in his body immediately surged up, ran rapidly along the meridians in his body, and finally merged into the giant ruler from Xiao Yang's palm. At the same time, the strange fire in the cyclone in Xiao Yang's body also surged up together. Xiao Yang held the ruler handle tightly in his right palm, and then the ruler body suddenly shook. Then, with a puff, the gorgeous strange fire quickly appeared on the surface of the Xian heavy ruler, transforming the whole Xian heavy ruler into a strange fire giant ruler. With the crazy influx of fighting spirit in Xiao Yang's body, the ruler body under the strange fire has become red at the moment, and the smell on it has become more and more terrible. In this, it seems that something terrible is brewing. As soon as the time comes, it will sweep across the void like a volcanic eruption in an instant and kill all directions. The momentum above the giant ruler in his hand also makes Xiao Yang's face hot at the moment. He really hasn't felt this familiar feeling for a long time. At the moment, he just wants to spend once with the giant ruler in his hand. Drink. With a long roar of heroic spirit and dry clouds, the world was shocked at this moment. Xiao Yang's palm held the giant ruler in his palm more and more hard. The fighting spirit in his body almost poured into it madly. The light on the giant ruler was also more and more dazzling, and the violent fighting spirit had reached an extremely terrible level. Drink. A long roar like a dragon came out again. Xiao Yang's eyes suddenly turned and looked at Luo Laro in the void below. The fire in his eyes flashed slightly, and the sound of clear laughter like the roar of thunder spread. Ha ha. Laro Luo, I dare to invite Laro Luo to try for me. I wonder if Laro Luo will agree. A long smile, which should have been the meaning of inquiry, was full of positive meaning. Obviously, whether Luo Laro would agree or not, Xiao Yang's next blow would point to Luo Laro. When Luo Laro heard the speech, he also gave a heroic laugh. He looked at each other with Qingmu. Qingmu also smiled and nodded. Then Luo Laro looked up, looked at Xiao Yang, and laughed. Okay. Since the little friend of Rock Owl wishes so, I will be the dragon of people for a while. Ha ha. The voice fell, and Luo Laro's figure appeared in the void hundreds of feet opposite Xiao Yang. He stood in the air and waited for Xiao Yang to blow out. Ha ha. Good. With a laugh, Xiao Yang suddenly shook his palm holding Shenchong ruler. The huge ruler in his right hand was even horizontal in the void, and the heavy ruler front was flush with his chest. At a certain moment, Xiao Yang suddenly moved on his face. His right arm suddenly used all his strength to blast out the huge ruler in his hand towards Luo Laro. At the same time, Xiao Yang also drank angrily word by word, saying, Drink, flame, chaos, bite, wave, foot. Every word comes out, the world trembles, and every sound resounds through the world like startling thunder, buzzing in the ears of anyone in the world. At the moment when Xiao Yang's voice fell, the shining giant ruler also crossed the sky in an instant, and a bright rainbow with a width of 10,000 feet also bombarded Luo Laro at the same time. At that moment, the surrounding void suddenly exploded. Between heaven and earth, a terrible hurricane suddenly blew up at this moment. In an instant, there was no cloud in the sky and no light in the earth. This piece of heaven and earth was divided into two halves at the moment when the foot-on appeared. Looking at Xiao Yang's powerful blow, Luo Laro couldn't help but raise a trace of admiration in his heart. With his eyesight, we can naturally see that Xiao Yang's flaming wave-swallowing ruler at the moment is just a ground-level fighting skill. But with this blow at the moment, I'm afraid it's some ordinary human-level fighting skills that can't be compared with it. The ground-level fighting skills are brought into full play. Even though there are factors that have been cultivated for a long time, Xiao Yang can also be called the dragon among people and the leader among the leaders among the young generation. This son will be extraordinary in the future, he whispered in his heart. Luo then returned to his mind and paid attention to the foot mang that was getting closer and closer in front of him. A smile slowly appeared at the corners of his mouth. Then, the palm under his sleeve robe slowly stretched out, his 5 fingers opened and gently pressed in the void in front of him. Rock Owl, the barrier I set up now is equivalent to the full protection of a strong fighter. You can do your best and let me see how much you can do. Haha. Okay. Since the elder said so, you are welcome, younger generation. The flame devours the wave ruler. Break it for me. Hearing Luo Laro's heroic laughter, Xiao Yang also immediately felt heroic in his heart. He also laughed. His heart moved and controlled the 10,000 feet and mans to bombard the past more rapidly. Boom. With an earth-shaking roar, the 10,000 feet of orn condensed by strange fire hit the void in front of Luo Laro. In time, invisible, a source gas barrier quickly appeared and resisted all the feet and orns. At present, Luo Laro's cultivation and fighting spirit have long become the history of his cultivation. Now he is in control of the backhand, which is the highest power in Yuanwu continent, Yuanqi. Although the source qi is slightly different from the fighting qi, it also belongs to the power of heaven and earth. It is no different from the fighting qi when used. Only compared with the rage of fighting qi, the source qi is more gentle and easier to melt into the body. When the cultivator's strength is improved. At this moment, the source gas barrier in front of Luo Laro is equivalent to the full protection of a Star King. However, although Luo Laro said so, the barrier set by his current strength, even if it is only equivalent to the strength of the Fighting Emperor, is also extraordinary. The barrier set by the Fighting Emperor can be compared. Therefore, the defensive nature of this barrier will be more terrible. At the moment when the 10,000 foot orn touched the barrier, it sounded like a thunderclap. In the void, a wave of waveform and wave-like spatial ripples spread rapidly. A terrible hurricane swept between the two, blowing and rocking the ancient Shenling tree within 1,000 miles. When the blow broke, Xiao Yang narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at the void. His heart also immediately raised a dignified feeling. The strong man of Fighting Emperor is really strong and powerful. He even took over the flame and wave ruler with all his strength. It's hard to imagine how terrible it would be if the real strong man of Fighting Emperor took the shot. But then, Xiao Yang's face showed heroic laughter again. With a clear drink, Xiao Yang's heavy ruler in his palm rose again, and his fighting spirit quickly surged up, laughing. Okay. I can't imagine that the full protection of the strong emperor is so terrible. Then I'll try my best to see if I can break the barrier. Naturally, Xiao Yang can't expect to really break the barrier with all his strength. After all, it is equivalent to the strength of a strong man fighting the emperor. If he is blown to pieces by a small half-emperor, is it too weak for the strong man fighting the emperor? Drink. With a violent drink, Xiao Yang suddenly forced his hand holding the Xian heavy ruler in the twinkling light in his eyes. Then he waved his arm, and the huge ruler rose in the air. The morale in the palm of his hand poured in rapidly. The dark ruler body also appeared red again. As soon as his wrist turned, Xiao Yang tilted the Xian heavy ruler in front of his chest, waved his left palm suddenly, and the gorgeous fire gushed out of the palm. Then he stroked with his big hand, and his palm scratched hard against the surface of the ruler. At the same time, the gorgeous different fire was also paved in an instant. At the moment when his palm crossed, Xiao Yang's face was sharp and fierce, and his body was slightly sideways. He suddenly pulled out his palm holding the Xian heavy ruler, just like a knife. He waved the huge ruler from bottom to top and cut it out. Then, another 10,000 feet on, like a startling wave, bombarded the barrier again. The flame devours the wave ruler. A blow fell, and without waiting for the 10,000 feet of rainbow to really bombard the barrier, Xiao Yang suddenly turned his body in place. The Xian heavy ruler also scratched hard in mid-air. The dark ruler body was quickly rendered red. When Xiao Yang turned around, The giant ruler in his hand was cut out again, and the startled ruler orn kept flying over the void. The flame devours the wave ruler. The flame devours the wave ruler. The flame devours the wave ruler. Like meteors chasing the moon, the feet and mans continuously crossed the void, and then hit the void in front of Luo Lao. And those feet, just as they touched the barrier, were scattered, turned into a scattered flame, and gradually disappeared above the void. Luo Lao behind the barrier looked at this scene like an infinite cycle with a smile and appreciated Xiao Yang constantly in his heart. Invisible, the invisible barrier in front of Luo Lao also trembled slightly. From the towering immobility at the beginning to the continuous tremor at the moment, it has been constantly explaining the strength of Xiao Yang. Moreover, after continuously using the flame and wave ruler for countless times, Xiao Yang is still full of fighting spirit and capable. From this alone, we can see that Xiao Yang's own inside information is by no means comparable to that of an ordinary half-emperor. Moreover, what surprised Luo most was that Xiao Yang's strength had reached the peak of the late 3-star half-emperor. It was only a step away from the 4-star half-emperor. As far as he knew, Xiao Yang only broke through to the 3-star half-emperor a few months ago. It's hard for anyone to imagine such a rapid cultivation speed. Within half a year, from the breakthrough of 2-star and half-emperor to the peak of 3-star and half-emperor in the later stage, such achievements are enough to make other strong people at the same level ashamed. Moreover, the most important thing is that most of the strong men who have reached the semi-emperor are old men and women of a certain age. Now Xiao Yang, although he is middle-aged, is still a young man in this cultivation world. Judging from Xiao Yang's strength, he is only the youngest generation in the whole cultivation world. Young, terrible and gifted, he is the best among the people. Coupled with his calm and mature mind and various high-level fighting skills, he thinks of Xiao Yang's origin. At the moment, Luo Lao's heart is shocked. His eyes slowly raised. Luo Lao's eyes looked at Xiao Yang through the void in front of him. His eyes were full of amazement. Ha ha! Unexpectedly, it's really unexpected. The barren land of fighting spirit will be so talented. It seems that after it grows up, it's time for the mainland to change another day. Hehe, the boys of this generation are really not weak. I hope that boy won't fall behind. Drink. Buddha anger. Round. Back. Suddenly, another startling cry spread. Xiao Yang's palms closed in front of his chest. The different fire wheel in his palm rotated at a high speed. In the middle of the wheel, a dark light mass the size of the palm also rotated at a high speed. When Xiao Yang drank hard in his mouth, he pushed his palms forward together. At the next moment, a dark light column with a width of 100 feet tore the void in an instant and shot hard at old Luo. When the two touch each other, the expected violent explosion did not come out. Instead, it is a kind of silence like death. The dark light column seems to be integrated with the barrier, like glue. The two are closely pasted together, and the power on the barrier is also rapidly weakened. Seeing the scene in front of him, Luo Lao's face changed instantly. Under his perception, the power on the barrier was rapidly weakening. In other words, under the action of the painted black light column, the power, source gas, was rapidly decomposing. This strange fighting skill can decompose the source gas. Without waiting for the words in his heart to fall, a small crack appears on the barrier. At the next moment, Luo Lao's face was suddenly dignified. In a great hall, at this moment, 3 figures are sitting in it. These 3 people are Xiao Yang and Luo Lao, as well as the head of the present Shenling family, Qingmu. Hihi, old man Luo, I didn't expect you to personally attack a semi-emperor boy. You're not afraid to spread it and damage your reputation? Ha ha. At the moment, Aoki sat beside Luo Ao and looked at Luo Lao with a mocking face. He also opened his mouth without saving face and laughed. Xiao Yang was sitting opposite the 2 old men, playing with the teacup made of Shenling wood. His face was full of smiles because of Qingmu's words. When Luo Lao heard Qingmu's words, he glared at him with resentment, didn't pay more attention, but took the teacup with his palm, took a sip, and then said faintly, What's the matter with my hand? I hurt a hair of him. I just want to test his fighting skills, so I want to talk to you, you smelly old man. After that, he threw the teacup on the table between them with one hand, and slapped his palm. Then he closed his palm under his sleeve robe after a cold hum. However, while earning his sleeve robe, Luo Lao's skin at the corners of his eyes could not help shaking slightly, and he breathed quietly in his mouth. The palm under his sleeve robe could not help shaking. Obviously, at the moment, in his heart, he was not as calm as it seemed. Xiao Yang's memory of Buddha anger reincarnation just now contains all the power in his body. Under Xiao Yang's high interest at that time, the Buddha anger reincarnation is also more powerful than usual. This, however, is not enough to make Luo Ao and other super strong people moved by it. According to ordinary terms, even if Xiao Yang's blow is strong enough, it is far from breaking the full protection of a strong man fighting the emperor. What really breaks the barrier and moves Luo Ao is the terrible energy beam in the reincarnation of Buddha anger. Luo Ao could not imagine that the light column would be so strange. While constantly consuming the source gas above the barrier, it would also devour and absorb a small part of the power for its own use. The most terrible thing is that the light column is actually forcibly decomposing the source gas on the barrier. Finally, in order not to let Xiao Yang find out, but also not to lose face too much, so old Luo will make a decisive move and personally test the power in the Pillar of Light. After some understanding and exploration, what moved Luo more was that the power in the light column was dark. Even he could not explore. The heart once again recalled the previous scene in the void. Luo Laro's heart couldn't help feeling a shock again. When I looked back, I saw that Xiao Yang and Qingmu were not abnormal. Then I relaxed in my heart, but then it seemed to think of something. I looked at Xiao Yang with my eyes and said with a smile, "Rock Owl, your medicine refining meeting that day is not over yet." Hearing the meeting of the medicine refiner, Xiao Yang first gave a slight pause, raised his eyebrows, then gave a wry smile, frowned and sighed. "There are some reasons why I haven't officially entered the competition, but now it should be over. I've been in the spirit space for a long time." When this remark came out, Oki on Luo's side also nodded gently. The herbalist meeting is a competition designated by Dantar. It is held individually or jointly by all branches under Dantar. It is absolutely impossible to be forcibly postponed because of someone. Xiao Yang has been staying for a long time since he entered the Shenling family that day. It is reasonable that the medicine refining masters meeting should have ended. Laro Luo mentioned it at the moment, but it was a little late. When Luo Laro heard Xiao Yang's words, he smiled, turned his eyes to the green wood, lost a mouthful of mellow tea again, and said with a smile, "Yes, this tea is good. Old Oroki, leave more for me later, ha." Then, in the unhappy look on Oroki's face, Laro Luo slowly turned around, looked at Xiao Yang again, and said with a smile, "Indeed, the herbalist meeting is indeed strict in specifications and cannot be postponed. This is also the regulation of Dantar. After all, as the first force in the mainland, their authority must be absolute." As soon as he spoke, Qingmu, who thought there was still a play to see, turned his eyes to Xiao Yang on the other side. Xiao Yang nodded slightly when he heard Luo Laro's words. Indeed, as the first force in the mainland, few people dared to violate the rules of Dantar. But the next moment, Luo Laro smiled, glanced at the greenwood beside him, and a wicked smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. Then he looked at Xiao Yang and said with a smile, "But there are always exceptions. The rules of Dantar can't be violated, but after all, strength is respected in this continent. Therefore, I talked with them. Sure enough, they agreed very happily." Luo Laro's words came out, but Xiao Yang opposite looked at Qingmu. Xiao Yang was okay and just smiled. Qingmu burst into laughter after holding it for a moment. With their nature of mind, how could they not know what method Luo always used to talk to each other? I'm afraid they all spoke unilaterally. The other party only had the chance to listen. However, although thinking like this in his heart, Xiao Yang showed a grateful smile on his face. Anyway, Luo's behavior is just to help himself. This is enough to make him Xiao Yang grateful. In the suspicious eyes of Luo Ao and Oroki, Xiao Yang slowly got up, stood upright and faced the two elders. Then he bowed deeply in their eyes full of appreciation. "I'm here. Thank you, senior." Luo Laro and Qingmu smiled at each other, nodded slightly, and then looked at Xiao Yang together. As soon as Luo Laro's sleeve touched, an invisible force lifted Xiao Yang up, and then opened his mouth and said with a smile, "Oh, well, I know you're a good boy, so I won't say anything more. I'll accept your gift. However, as a reward, this courtesy is not enough. If you really repay me, I hope you can win the champion of the medicine refining masters meeting. In this way, I think I can help you without help. How about it?" "No problem." Xiao Yang was stunned when he heard the speech. Then he smiled and nodded gently in response to Luo Laro's words. To say anything else, Xiao Yang may not be sure, but this medicine refining skill is Xiao Yang's housekeeping skill. If Xiao Yang doesn't dare to nod at this point, let alone others. Seeing this, Luo smiled again, and then continued to say with a smile, However, there are still 3 days before January. You can stay here for these 3 days. After 3 days, I will wait for you to win the championship. This video will end here.